The film starts with a woman traveling from China to Hong Kong, carrying a lunchbox. When she arrives home, she opens all the boxes and throws away the food except for the last one, which contains a small dish resembling momos. She cleans and eats them. These are called dumplings, which is also the title of the film. The woman's name is May, and people call her Auntie May because she is very old. However, she looks like she is in her 30s, which is surprising. The secret behind her youthful appearance is terrifying. May not only makes dumplings for herself, but is also famous for selling them, as they are fresh and tasty. The real secret of her beauty and young looks lies in a special ingredient she uses in her dumplings. The next day, a woman named Mrs. Lee comes to May. She was once a movie star, but has now drifted away from her career after marrying a rich businessman. She is living her life just as his wife, but there is neither love nor a real relationship between them. She married him for money and status, but now she feels she is losing it. As Mrs. Lee ages, her husband's attention is shifting towards young, beautiful women. Feeling dejected, she believes that if she loses her youth and beauty, she will have nothing left. She comes to May after hearing about the miraculous power of her dumplings, which are rumored to make people look young again. These dumplings can slow down or reverse aging, making a person so attractive that others can't resist them. However, Mrs. Lee is skeptical. She asks May for proof, to which May responds by asking her to guess her age. Mrs. Lee estimates May is around 30, but May reveals she is much older. She explains that no cream, lotion, or surgery can give results like her dumplings. Aging is a natural process that happens from within, and May has discovered how to reverse it through her dumplings. Convinced, Mrs. Lee agrees to try them. Initially hesitant, she eventually eats them, hoping for a miracle. She soon becomes a regular at May's house, consuming the dumplings despite sensing that they might contain meat from small animals. However, she is too desperate for results to question it further. Mrs. Lee begins noticing changes in her appearance, but she wants even faster results. She urges May to enhance the process, and May assures her it will happen. Around the same time, a woman brings her 15-year-old pregnant daughter, Kate, to May. The girl's pregnancy is a result of abuse by her own father. Her mother is desperately seeking help to either deliver or abort the child. May examines Kate and realizes the fetus is 6 months old, making it a difficult case. She refuses to help and advises the mother to seek help from a black market hospital. However, May has connections with the hospital, not as a doctor, but because she steals the fetuses from there to use as the secret ingredient in her dumplings. Meanwhile, Mrs. Lee discovers that her husband is having an affair with a hotel staff member who visits his room every night. Devastated, she calls May to her house, expressing her pain and longing for a child of her own. Seeing her despair, May decides to help her no matter what. At the same time, Kate's health deteriorates. In desperation, her mother brings her back to May, who decides to deliver the child without anesthesia to preserve its nutritional value. The process is painful, but when the baby is born, May is thrilled. This baby is healthier than the one she usually takes from the hospital, making it perfect for her dumplings. She stores the baby's meat in her fridge, preparing to use it to give Mrs. Lee the overnight transformation she desires. The next day, Mrs. Lee visits May and unknowingly eats dumplings made from the baby's meat. After some time, she starts to question what May has been feeding her. Curious, she sneaks into the kitchen and witnesses May grinding the baby's meat. Horrified, she runs away, vomiting at the realization of what she has been eating. However, after thinking about her husband's infidelity and her fading beauty, she convinces herself that staying young and beautiful is more important. She returns to May and continues eating the dumplings, enjoying every bite, determined to keep her youth at any cost. Soon, Mrs. Lee starts seeing remarkable changes. She becomes so attractive that her husband is mesmerized by her and starts giving her attention. They rekindle their relationship, and Mrs. Lee feels she has regained happiness. However, every miracle comes with a price. At a party, Mrs. Lee is humiliated when she starts emitting a strong fishy odor. Embarrassed, she locks herself in the bathroom and takes a long bath, furious at May for not warning her about the side effects. When she confronts May claims she had never experienced this issue before and reassures Mrs. Lee that it will subside. Relieved, Mrs. Lee doesn't realize her husband has overheard the conversation. Suspicious, he investigates and learns the truth about May. Instead of being horrified, Lee becomes fascinated by May's youthful beauty. He visits her the next day, and May seduces him. Lee is a shallow man who values beauty above all, so he starts an affair with May. This is exactly what May wanted. She now has control over a rich man. Meanwhile, Mrs. Lee realizes she is addicted to the dumplings. Without them, her youth and beauty will fade. She begins experiencing withdrawal symptoms, including red spots on her body and sleeplessness. Desperate, she demands more dumplings from May. But May refuses that. In the midst of all this, Kate dies from the complications of her botched delivery. Her devastated mother, overcome with grief, kills her husband, the man responsible for Kate's suffering. The neighbors inform the police, and during questioning, Kate's mother reveals May's involvement. However, before the police can arrest her, May escapes, leaving Mrs. Lee behind. Now, Mrs. Lee is trapped in her obsession with youth. Determined to continue the process on her own, Mrs. Lee tracks down her husband's mistress, who is 5 months pregnant. She bribes the woman, offering double the money Lee had promised in exchange for the baby. This would serve two purposes: getting rid of her rival and obtaining a new source of meat for her dumplings. The woman agrees, and Mrs. Lee takes her to a doctor for an illegal delivery. Just as planned, the mistress dies during the procedure, and Mrs. Lee takes the baby home. Without hesitation, she prepares to grind its meat, ready to consume it for eternal youth in the end, Mrs. Lee is transformed into a murderer, just like May. She no longer needs anyone. She can now sustain her youth and beauty by herself. With money, she can always acquire newborns to maintain her looks. She finally achieves her goal of eternal youth and secures her husband's attention, but at a horrifying cost. The story ends here, leaving behind the chilling truth of vanity, obsession, and the gruesome lengths some people will go to for beauty. Thanks for watching.